guys, in my last video I talked more about Lot than I did Abraham. Today I'm going to be switching the focus back on Abraham. If you remember, the last thing that we talked about with Abraham was him pleading with God not to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And then God went ahead and did that anyway. So that's like the last that we heard from Abraham last week. In chapter 20 of Genesis, it says Abraham moves on and he goes to like the land of like Gerar. The king of Gerar is Abimelech. So Abraham goes to the king, to Abimelech, and he tells him, again, like he did with the Pharaoh in Egypt, if you remember the call of Abram when he went to Egypt, he and his wife lied to the Pharaoh and said that she was his sister. They did that again here to Abimelech. They told him that Sarah was his sister, and the king sent his men out to get Sarah, and he took her. God tells Abimelech in his dream that night, "You're as good as dead, because Sarah is a married woman." Abimelech is like, "Whoa, hold on a minute. I didn't know that. First of all, I haven't even touched her yet. I haven't touched her. And second, like, she told me that he was her brother, and he told me that she was his sister." He says, "I haven't done anything wrong. My conscience is clean." And then God's like, "Oh yeah, I know. I know you haven't touched her yet. I kept you from doing that, like, just now. Like, I just kept you from doing that. That's why I'm here. I'm keeping you from sinning against me. Now return Sarah to Abraham, for he is a prophet, and you will live. But if you don't return her, you will die, and all of yours will die." So I guess that means like everyone in his household. Back up for just a second. God says Abraham is a prophet. Like, I know we know this, but why? Like, what has Abraham ever really done to deserve the title of a prophet of God? Like, what has he done that's so great? He hasn't, in my opinion, he hasn't really done anything good at all. But anyway, God says to Abimelech, "Return her, and you'll live," and all that. And he'll pray for you, and you will live, is actually what he says. God says, "Return Sarah to Abraham, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, you'll die, and all of yours will die." So the next morning, Abimelech goes to Abraham, and he's like, "What did I ever do to you? Like, how have I wronged you? Why did you do this to me?" And Abraham's response, I think, is kind of funny, so I'm going to just read that real quick. This is Genesis chapter 20, verse 11 through 13. Remember, Abimelech asked, "Why did you do this to me? Like, what did I ever do to you?" And this is Abraham's response to that question. Abraham replied, "I said to myself, there is surely no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother, and she became my wife. And when God had me wander from my father's household, I said to her, 'This is how you can show your love to me. Everywhere we go, say of me, he is my brother.'" So that verse, it made me laugh a little bit because it's funny. Like, he's like, "Yeah, well, I saw that there was no fear of God here, so I decided to test you. But, you know, I didn't really lie, because she really is my sister. We have the same father and not the same mother." I guess that was good enough for Abimelech, because then he brings, like, sheep and cattle and male and female slaves and gives them to Abraham. And he's like, "My land is before you. Live wherever you want." At the end of chapter 20, Abraham prays to God, and God heals all of Abimelech's people and his household because he had closed up all of their wombs, and so he opened them back up. Chapter 21, the birth of Isaac. Remember last week at the beginning of my video, I talked about the visitors, the 3 visitors, and God at the end of that story, he said, "About a year from now, I'll come back and your wife will have had a son, and you'll name him Isaac," and all that. Well, it's a year later, and this is the story of the birth of Isaac. It doesn't really say much, you know, it doesn't go into detail or anything. It just says that basically Abraham is 100 years old, Sarah has the baby, they name him Isaac, and she's really happy. The next story in chapter 21 is Hagar and Ishmael sent away. Video number 4 that I did, it was from Abram to Abraham. In that one, we talked about Hagar and Ishmael. And Hagar was one of Sarah's slaves. And he got her pregnant, and they had Ishmael. Ishmael is Abraham's son, but not Sarah's son. But if you don't remember that story, or you didn't watch that video, or whatever, it was Sarah's idea. That whole thing, him getting their servant pregnant and raising the baby, Ishmael, everything, that was all Sarah's idea. So Isaac grows and he weans, and Abraham has a feast for him because he's weaning, I guess. And at the feast, Sarah says to Abraham, she's like she decides she doesn't like Ishmael and Hagar hanging around, and she doesn't want Isaac to have to share his inheritance with his older brother Ishmael, even though technically he would have the rights to it first, but she doesn't like it. So she says to Abraham, get rid of that slave and her son. And Abraham is like kind of conflicted about it. He's distressed about it. And God comes to Abraham and he's like, no, go ahead, do what your wife wants. So God's given him the okay to just abandon his son. He's like, yeah, just send him off. Forget about him. Don't worry, I'll make him a great nation or something or other whatever. But it's okay, just focus on your wife and Isaac because apparently he's the only one who matters. So God says, go ahead, send him away. Listen to your wife, do what she wants. So he does. The next day, Abraham gets some food and some water and gives it to Hagar and sends her and Ishmael off into the desert of Beersheba. So they're walking through the desert and they run out of water. And Hagar puts Ishmael like under a bush and she goes away and she starts to sob because her son is thirsty and she's afraid he's going to die. But God sends an angel down and the angel's like, God heard the boy crying, everything's gonna be okay, basically, take the boy by the hand and open your eyes, and she opens her eyes and there's a well of water, just magically in the middle of the desert, a well. So they get some water and then they, I guess, continue on their journey. They end up staying in the desert of Paran. Then it says that Hagar went to Egypt and got Ishmael a wife and brought her back to him, so I guess it's been some time has passed. This is the last story of chapter 20. It's called the Treaty of Beersheba. So Abimelech and Abraham, I guess for some reason they're in the desert of Beersheba, which just a second ago is where Ishmael and Hagar were. So remember the whole well thing, the well in the middle of the desert, same desert. So I guess this is some time down the road, I'm assuming. Abimelech and Abraham are in the desert and they decide to have a treaty. Abimelech is like, hey, swear to me before God and in front of everybody that you will not deal falsely with me or my children or my descendants ever again. And Abraham swears, and then he's like, hey, where did this well come from that your servant seized or whatever? Like, he starts questioning him about the well. And Abimelech is like, I don't know, this is the first time I've heard of it, I don't know anything about the well. Abraham gets some sheep and cattle and gives it to Abimelech, and they make a treaty. So then Abraham gets 7 lambs, and he lines them up and he sets them apart or whatever. And Abimelech is like, hey, what are you doing with those lambs? What are those for? And Abraham's like, oh, this is a witness, to prove or whatever that I built this well. So that's what that's for, which doesn't make any sense to me because he didn't build the damn well. The well was there already. And then he asked about it, and then he's like, oh, they don't know anything about it, so I'm just going to take the credit for it. So he didn't build the well, but he definitely wants the credit for it. And then it says that Abimelech returned to the land of the Philistines, and Abraham stayed there, and he planted a tree, and he called on God, and he stayed in the desert of Beersheba for a long time. Chapter 22, Abraham tested. This story is one that I'm pretty sure that we have all heard. It's, the story of Isaac and Abraham. So we're finally to this story. This story, I've been looking forward to reading this one. Right. I'm going to start chapter 22 out by reading the first 2 verses of chapter 22. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about." Okay, so my first problem with this story is that it says, "Your only son Isaac, whom you love." But we know that Isaac is not Abraham's only son. He's not even his oldest son. He's not even his first son. Ishmael is his first son. Ishmael is... Are we just forgetting about him? Are we just forgetting that he ever existed, or does he just not count anymore? Because God was like, "Oh, you cast him out, so you're free from that responsibility." I think that Abraham's kind of a deadbeat parent, in my opinion. So Abraham takes Isaac and 2 servants, and they start out towards the place God told him about. And they're walking, and on day 3, after traveling for 3 days, Abraham looks up and he sees the mountain and the place that God told him about. So he turns to his servants and he's like, "Hey, you guys stay here with the donkey. We'll go up and do the sacrifice, and then we'll come right back." So at this point, Abraham is lying to his servants. He has no intention of coming back with Isaac alive. So this is a lie. Obviously, nobody knows what his actual intentions are, and he has not told anyone. So I think maybe he's a little ashamed of his actions. So the servants stay with the donkey, and Abraham and Isaac start towards the mountains, and Isaac looks around and he notices that they don't have any animals to sacrifice. So he's like, "Hey, Father, where's the lamb for the burnt offering?" And Abraham's like, "Oh, don't worry, my son, God will provide it for us." Then he takes and he straps the wood and all the heavy shit to his son Isaac and makes him carry it, and all he carries is a knife and fire, which I'm guessing is probably a small torch or something. But he makes his kid carry the wood that he's gonna use to burn him. So they get to the spot, and Abraham builds his altar, and then he bounds Isaac. He ties him up, and he lays him on the table. And he pulls out his knife to slay him. And I can just imagine how fucking terrified this child is right now. His dad, who he trusts with his life, has him tied up, bound, and tied to a stone slab with wood on it. He's fixing to get a knife shoved into him. He knows that his dad's trying to kill him. He's probably fucking terrified. He's gonna have nightmares for sure. So right before he slays his son, God sends down an angel, and the angel's like, "Abraham, stop. Don't lay a hand on that boy. Don't hurt him. You've been tested, and now I know that you have the fear of God. So everything's cool. It's alright. Just kidding. Don't do it. Don't kill him." So Abraham looks up, and he sees a ram stuck in a thicket by its horn. So he goes, and he gets the ram, and he kills the ram, and sacrifices the ram instead of his son. So then God blesses him, and he's like, "All of your descendants will be numerous, as many as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashores." And then they go back to their servants and continue on their way to Beersheba, to the desert of Beersheba or whatever. And there they stay for a long time. So that's where I'm going to end this story. Abraham's not looking any better yet. It's coming off pretty fucking crazy to me. If I heard a voice in my head telling me to kill my son, I'd be checking myself in to the nearest possible mental health facility there is. Because that's not God, that's fucking crazy, is what that is. And I'm sure that Isaac needs years of therapy to deal with that one, because that's traumatic. It's traumatic. I'm sorry, but any child who gets tied up by their parent and bound, fucking bound by their parent and laid out and about to be stabbed is gonna need therapy. This kid is screwed up. Abraham probably just fucked up Isaac's head for life. If you watched my video that I made, like not last week, but like the week before, I think it was Abram to Abraham. At the end of that one, I talked about how I was getting a new camera and new lighting and stuff. Got that. Last video, I was recorded with that camera. I didn't like it. The camera was awful. The quality was awful. So I decided to get a different one. I spent a little bit more money, got a better camera, and I'm using it now, so better. I've got my light, better lighting, definitely. I'm much happier with this equipment. Thank you for bearing with me through last week's video and the horrible quality, the sound cutting in and out, and the picture was just, it was just not good. But thank you for watching it and for bearing with me, and now I've got a better camera, so we shouldn't have that problem anymore. If you like my videos, share them. Like, seriously, share them. It helps me a lot. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I still need more subscribers. I haven't reached my goal yet. I need at least 100 subscribers is my goal for right now, so that I can change my URL on my YouTube channel, because I have to have a certain amount to do that. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure you do. And if you don't have a YouTube channel, just make an account real quick. It takes like 10 seconds, make it, and then subscribe. It would be really great, and I really appreciate it. Question though, if God asked you to kill your kid, would you do it?